Marc Suarez, welcome to the Transition Podcast, dog.
It's good to be here, man.
It's good. It's good to see you. I know I've talked to you about this for like about a year, so I finally got you on. I convinced you.
Yeah, well, I mean, listen, you did. You're very convincing. I know you are, especially in your business now.
No, but thank you for coming on. So, Marc, you saw me. We grew up playing baseball. You went to Coral Park as well for a little bit. Southwest. But I do remember, you believe it or not, the first time I think I ever met you.
I went to Columbus and Southwest. But that's another beer. There's more big leaguers, I think, from that era that left Columbus than graduated.
Yeah. So you were at Carlos Castillo and Nick out? Okay.
Yeah. We were. I was there 2 years, but that year I think we were ranked third in the nation that year.
Southwest was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Southwest always had a good team. And I mean, all the Westchester teams, right? We can argue all day about that. Miami just is a hotbed for baseball. But the first time I remember meeting you, may not remember this, was you were this huge guy, right?
Well, that was since I was 10. I stopped growing after I was 10.
Well, bro, you were actually hitting batting practice at Coral Park. And you were hitting balls over the center field wall like it was going out of style. And I think I came up to you when we were talking, and you gave me a bat. And I was like,
that.
You gave me a bat. I'll never forget that. C243.
Yeah, that's what I used.
And then
Cupped.
We became friends, and then I went to college, and then somehow I end up in your house when your parents' house were on Coral Way and
127th. Yeah.
127th. I'll never forget. You took me to your house, and you had a bucket of bats, and I think I walked out with like 3 bats.
Yeah, man.
That was cool. I'll never forget that. You took care of me.
You know, you what's the saying? You get what you give, right?
You do.
In life. And you met my grandmother.
I did.
Went by, she was always cooking, but I was raised by her because my parents worked, middle class, working Westchester family. We say middle class. I think we were poor, but our parents did a good job of insulating us from that. We didn't really need anything else, and I think playing baseball kind of distracted us probably from
the realities.
From the realities that we didn't, that our parents didn't want us to know about, right? But
yeah.
But also made sure we knew about, right? So we can
be humble and be good people.
Exactly.
It's funny you say that because like when we were talking earlier on the podcast, it's like when you're playing baseball, I hate to call it a bubble because I don't know that bubble is the right word, but like you're so distracted in such a healthy environment. You're more about being on the field and being with your boys and like that camaraderie. And your mind's not like you're not thinking about, whether your parents have money or whatever. You're just thinking about, I got to go to practice. I'm going to go out with my boys today. I'm going to go out with my boys. I'm going to have a good time. And, bistec con arroz con frijoles is, at night is like sufficient. Like, you're blessed, dude. You're eating food.
Yeah.
And you wake up and you do it again and you figure life out. And then I feel like sometimes like you get older and then you become more successful. And like those little stupid things now like mean something. Like, dude, let me check myself. Like when I was 15, if I had, arroz con huevo frito.
Yeah.
And it was like, all right, I'm good.
Like, square meal. Look.
Like the things we take for granted.
Well, and it's a struggle, right? We have kids now. And so, I have a friend of mine, these kids are much better kids than we were. I mean, because we're home, right? Like our grandparents aren't raising us, right? We used to get away. We used to, we'd ride bike all over this town. It was a different town, and you could do that. But I got a buddy of mine that, he tells me his kids are in high school and he says, these kids, man, they're such good kids. Like I realize how bad we were when I see how good these kids are. And I'm like, so what are you complaining about? And he says, they get caught. I tell my kids, I'm not mad at you at what you did. It's nowhere near as bad as what I did. I just never got caught. Like my parents never knew what we did. Like why can't you just get you need a little street in you, man. You gotta be able to, and I mean those are like the kind of, and I say street, It's not like street, like, being a thug, doing bad things.
Correct.
It's just like knowing how to navigate, knowing, what road not to, what road not to take your bike down, right? Don't go down that road. There's a big bully on that road, that guy, or if you're going to go down that road, you better be ready, or you better ride your bike fast. I mean, those are basic life lessons and instincts that you're not going to get from any school or university, that you got to live through. And I struggle with, like, how do we give our kids that, when they're so desensitized and like, try and run them out there,
It's amazing that you say that, because I know we had a conversation yesterday on the phone, and one of the things that my kids go to Westminster, and it's this amazing school, and the families are amazing. I went to Kinloch Park Elementary, and I walk into dinner parties sometimes, and they're like, I say it respectfully, but the education at Westminster isn't where it needs to be, and I'm like, I didn't have fucking books sometimes, and I'm not saying that it should be that way, but what I'm trying to say is, like, the education these kids have today is unbelievable. Now, is it the best of the best? We talked about the homeschooling.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to compare it to where we were. Like at Coral Park, I didn't have homework. I didn't have books. I don't know why. I'm not agreeing with that. I'm not saying that's a good thing, but what I think molded us, Mark, was the field and the street smart. It's like, and I've said this before, right, Jay? We've talked about this. Like when I first got into insurance, right. So I get into insurance, and there's a part of me that's like, now where's not confidence, but you're in the business world now, right? And you're in a room with all these Harvard and Yale grads, and and you kind of don't want to talk. You're like the jock. You were the jock, and then you realize, bro, I got a bunch of smart people around me that can't communicate. And again, I'm not saying that not all of them cannot communicate, but it's almost like they're just people who just live in this box, and that's all they can do.
Yeah.
So I would realize, I'm like, hey, look, guys, this is how we're going to get the deal done.
Right.
And I'm making the deal happen. And I figured out, I'm like, man, I learned that from being on the street, from figuring out when I was at an open house party, hey, shit may go down. I got to take care of my boys, or on the field constantly, always anticipating, always thinking ahead.
Right.
So I realized, okay, I'm not the actuary in insurance, but I'm going to get the deals done.
Right.
And I think, right, that's what you're saying, is like the Westchester and so Miami kept us alive.
Yeah, yeah. And 100%. And so where's the balance, right? Because, like, my parents weren't home, or I was raised by my grandmother. They were working, but when they were home, right? Or when they were at every game, or they found a way to be there. And so you see, are the parents active? How active are they? And we won't get into a whole, parenting discussion, but the balance, I think, that we've kind of crossed over and been successful is, how many of those kids that we grew up with, right? What are their chances now, today? And it's not so much because they didn't have books, or because we had books, we just chose to do other things, right? But my point is, we had a saying, dime con quien anda y te diré quién eres, right? It would tell me who you hang out with, and I'll tell you who you are, right? That's what our parents always told us.
And I think that's still true today.
It's true. And we hung around with good people, right? And all of them, if not most of them, are good people, hardworking people, good families, live a great, life. Now, you want to put your kids in a position, to surround themselves, with certain kids also, and certain people. So you try and elevate that game. And because, now they're playing baseball at Westminster with, some, 3 big leaguers kids, who we know, all those big leaguers, guys that played in the big leagues. And we know that their kids are going to inherit 20, 30, 40 million dollars. But we also know that those big leaguers came from the same place we did. They have the same core family values. They have, they still take their kids, to the hood and show them or remind them what they went through. But I think that environment, obviously, I think when you talk about, you pay for the environment, right? But then you also hear the complaints, right? Like the school's not doing this or not doing that, right? There's always those outliers. So you do the best you can, but it's like anything else, man. You can't duplicate, what we went through. Right?
No, you can't. And like you're talking about, like I talk about this all the time. I remember my grandmother would have to walk to Kenlock Park Middle School to like yell at me like at 9 o'clock at night to come back, me and my brothers, because I was just we're playing 3-on-3s all night. Like it was just normal.
Right.
Or, I get on the bus on Flagler and I take the school bus, the city bus to Gables.
Yeah.
Because I had 2 days and I would ride my bike and I got I'll never forget the first time I got jumped was in Jose Marti Park. This is a funny story. I was at Jose Marti Park, and I hope Nick Alvarez actually listens to this because Nick Alvarez was coaching me, and he may have been there or not. Eddie, no, Coach Eddie. God, man, Eddie. What was Eddie's last name? Eddie and Coach Snow one played at Barry, and Coach Eddie.
Yeah, I'm thinking, yeah.
Anyhow, I'm pitching at Jose Marti Park, and I'm playing a bunch of these Dominican kids that say they're 11, 12 years old. They're like 16. I'm straight up telling you the truth. And one guy yells at me, "Yo, you gotta slow it down." And I'm like, "Look, man, I'm not gonna slow it down. I'm coming at you, bro." So the game's over. And we go start shaking hands, and all of a sudden I'm going out to side, and some guy from the side goes out to me. Boom. Like just pretty much drills me. I fall to the ground, and before you know it, we're in an all-out brawl in the middle of the field. The city school bus, Jose Marti, and my point is like
nobody got sued.
Nobody got sued. We threw it down.
Yeah. And
when I went back to Shenandoah, you kind of earn your respects around people.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it was. The kids didn't like the fact that I was throwing hard, and they weren't winning the game, and that's how we grew up.
Now you'd be on a camera phone, and you would never get accepted.
Oh my God!
You'd be banned from baseball the rest of your life.
No, so do I agree with that happening today? No, but I can't lie and say I didn't mow me.
Yeah.
I can't lie and say that, okay, I didn't get my attention span and my awareness to where I needed to be. I know my surroundings. I always know where I'm at. I know my opponent.
Right.
And it was just part of creating, of having the ability of becoming street smart. And I think whether it's business, whether it's life, you need to be alert, and you need to know the environment that you're walking into, and it's for your own protection. And I think that's a gift, and especially in business, when you have to look a man in the eyes and you just know when somebody's not being honest or dishonest. And sometimes there's people out there that can deceive you and you can't control that. But I think there's an ability, and I think the classroom plays its purpose, Mark, but there's things that the classroom, and I'd say this all the time,
life
that can't teach you, can't teach you that, right? Like it can't teach you. So with my kids, that's why I have them in sports. Like today, Sean's, playing flag football. And when he plays flag football, I want him playing with kids from other parts of the city. Sean needs to get popped in the mouth, and it's okay. And that's how you expose these kids to reality. Yeah. Because the world, like Rocky said, the world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. And I do think that kids are, smarter, bigger, faster, and stronger nowadays. But I do believe as life goes on,
tougher though. They're not tougher.
They're not. And I think that the mentally tough kid in the future is going to be very successful in this world, because his mental capacity is going to be able to drive him in situations where I think other people break.
Well, and in life, I call them nuggets, right? You take nuggets wherever you can, and there's certain things that you don't realize mold you. And back to you know, what happened to you at Jose Marti Park or what happened to me when I was riding my bike. I'm in commercial real estate lending. That's what I do now, and we've talked a little bit about how you got to where you are.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that with you.
Where I got, but one of the things that taught me is how to manage risk. I mean, I walk into a room and look, people's best attributes are their worst. There's no, the pendulum. If you're really good at something, that one thing you're really good at brings a lot of faults with it, right?
Right.
I believe that. So
I'm with you.
But so for me, I walk into
your gift can be your curse sometimes.
Right. I walk into a party, a kid's party, and the first thing I'm analyzing is where's my kid gonna break his head or fall in the pool and drown. And I go to the deepest, darkest corner of the world, and then I come back. But what does that allow me to do? It allows me to go to really understand people, and when I'm analyzing risk on a transaction, and when I'm representing my company, and you know, my dad always told me it's easy to be brave with other people's money, right? So I treat my company's money like it's my money. But in doing so, I know that I have to, you know, I gotta compete, right? And I gotta manage that. And having the ability to go that far in my head and come back allows me to look beyond the real estate or beyond the actual, you know, numbers that these kids, that God bless them, that I wish I could have gone to Harvard. And look, that's another
no
beer.
doubt,
and that's another beer. I had offers from Dartmouth, I had offers from Duke, but I wanted to play as a freshman, and I wanted to play at a baseball school. Right, I would never let my kids make that decision, you know. But look, my parents, immigrants, did the best they can. I'm going to a 4-year school down the road. We're number 5 in the country, you know, and I'm playing as a freshman and I'm competing, you know. But my point is that risk and managing that life lesson allows me to be successful because I go to that place further than my competitors do, and I can come back and I can do a deal and structure a deal that they wouldn't do. Why? Because I know the guy. I know the guy I'm dealing with. I know if that guy's gonna. I know that guy.
It's music to my ears, man. I know why you're laughing, man.
But I know that's the street. I'm like, okay, I've been on that street. I know him. He's predictable.
You want to go start an insurance company with me?
But I'm saying
you get it.
I'm saying I know that guy. You know, I know he's predictable. I know what he's gonna do. He's gonna do it. But is he a bad guy? Is he just a tough businessman? You know, is he just, you know, everyone's got their things. And so that's one of those lessons that you're like, you know, that you struggle with at times because you're like, man, I'm paranoid. Man, why do I think everyone's out? And that's not the truth. I don't think everyone's out. I just know that you got to know that you can't make a right on that street. That's all. If you could do that, that's a great attribute. Does it hold me back sometimes? Yeah, but you know, you take those nuggets, right? And it's done more good than bad for me.
And I think it's music to my ears, Mark, because it's such a gift, right? To like, you know, I can go to that deep, dark place and come back. And that's an ability that not everybody has. Like, it's like with life, right? You're like, okay, what's the worst case scenario? And that's why I think I ended up in insurance. It's funny because I love risk because I can identify risk.
Right.
But I identify risk in people. You know, I don't own an insurance company. I'm in the insurance agency, so I sell insurance. But one of the things that I think I do well, and I learned this from the field when we're talking about risk management, is I vet people. Like, I do business with people. And I think I can able to communicate with a carrier, be like, hey, this person's a good person. Or this person you got to be careful with. Or this person's going to default on your loan. Like, they're not going to care on your word. You know, it's like, there's men in this world, like, they're going to go, like, you know, if you say, wait, you know what, your financials don't need what they need to be right now, but I believe in you and I believe in your concept, and I'm going to lend you that $1 million. And you go to bed at night, and Mark, you know, like, that's a good dude, and you know that guy's going to go to war and make it happen. And then there's a guy whose financials are great, but things can turn around, and you already know that that guy under pressure, he ain't good.
Yeah.
He can't handle it, and he's gonna break on you.
Yeah.
Right? He doesn't want the ball with the bases loaded, and I think that gift is no doubt why you've probably become so successful. One of the attributes, besides knowing your craft, that is what sets you apart. Because there's a lot of guys, I'm sure, at your company that can underwrite and do mathematics.
Right.
But nobody has a gift that Marc has of you going to your people and your teammates and be like, listen to me, let's take a risk with this guy. This guy's going to go somewhere.
Yeah.
This takes me back now. This is what I want to talk about transition. You were a ball player. You grew up in Westchester. You have a lot of friends out here, a lot of people that you love, a lot, the Miami, what I call the Miami baseball community, which I think is very special. A lot of people have done a lot of amazing things. And to me, it's not a coincidence that I also remember you, not only were you playing, but then you started scouting.
Yeah.
So I don't see a difference between when you do business development. To me, is like a scout, right? You're scouting the people that you want to lend money to. So let's talk a little bit about, you were a scout in baseball before you became this very successful businessman in the lending world of, multifamily and commercial. And there's a prior life to Marc. So let's talk about that transition.
Yeah.
So you were in scouting. I remember you timing my 60, dude. Did you give me? Did I run a 6'7" with you? Or I ran a 6'9"?
Look, I like.
I tried to take like a yard. I was trying to take the edge on you.
Look, the reality is when I took a liking to you, and one because I saw that day that I gave you those bats, there was other guys there that that were there, and they didn't walk away with bats, right? And I remember when I was a kid, I had my grandfather was playing dominoes, my uncle, and I saw we were at a party. I forgot what it was, and I remember a guy telling me a story on the side. And he said, "Look, there's three kinds of people in this life. There's a guy that sees Mr. Opportunity across the street, and he says, 'Hey, man, look at Mr. Opportunity. That's Mr. Opportunity over there.' Doesn't say anything. Then there's the other guy that comes and says, 'Hey, that's Mr. Opportunity. Hey, Mr. Opportunity,' and waves at him. 'Hey, that's Mr. A.' And then there's the guy that says, 'Hey, that's Mr. Opportunity. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to introduce myself. And I'm going to talk to him.' Now I'm going to take a selfie with him." Yeah. But like you always had, I saw that in you. And so back to your thing of the 60, I had put a 6'9" beforehand. I asked everyone else what they had, and they had a 7. I was like, I have a 6'9" because I like to. But there's a lesson in that, and I'll get into another lesson I had when I was a kid, and I've told this story. I threw my helmet. I was 7 years old, and my dad was always the guy in right field that he stood quietly. Wouldn't say much. After the game, we're driving home. He would pull over the car, or we'd stop, and he'd talk about the game, and we'd analyze it.
You would do that?
Yeah. And he said...
That's amazing, right?
Yeah, but real soft-spoken. And he said, listen, and I do that with my son now. He said, listen, what you did today was very ugly, You threw the helmet. He says, I don't know what kind of opportunities you're going to have in life. Our parents, your grandfather comes from the north of Spain. He's Gallego. They're known for being hard-headed, like brute. And he says, if you're smart and you behave the way you did today, you're going to have a tough time in life. He goes, if you're not smart and you behave the way you did today, you're not going to make it in life. Now, if you're not that smart, and you're a good guy, and people like you, you got a chance. And if you're a little smart and you're a good guy, you can go to the moon. So try to be liked. In life, try to be liked. So you fast forward, I had Tommy John surgery. I'm in my, I should have made the AA club. They wanted me to go play every day back in A-ball, where I was an all-star in the Midwest League, 2 years before my surgery. And I'm like 0 for 24. Mentally, I don't want to be there because I've already been here. And I go to the bar, which I did a good job of, by the way. That was one of my better traits. I enjoyed every moment of being king shit on Third Island in the minor leagues. I enjoyed every moment of it. And I'm sitting there, and my manager is at the bar next to me. I said,
This is a part, I hate to say it, but it's almost like part of being a minor leaguer, dude.
oh, yeah.
The first time I was, and I'm not gonna cut you off real quick. The first time I was on minor league bus, I freaked out. So I'm in Great Falls, Montana, and it's our first road trip.
Billings.
Oh, you were in Billings. That's right. The Reds were in Billings.
We won the championship, 97.
So we were in the playoffs and we lost.
We won in Great Falls. It was the Dodgers.
Okay, well I'm in Great Falls, and our head coach and our pitching coach and our hitting coach and they brought a cooler of beer in the bus.
Yeah.
And I'm a college athlete. I'd never seen that. So there's a cooler of beer. I'm talking about like a whole cooler. It's gonna be. I think we were driving to Idaho that night or something like that.
10-hour bus rides in that league.
Oh, bro, I used to drink Tylenol PM was the only way for me to fall asleep.
That was a lot of beer.
So they're like, "You guys want a beer?" And I was like, "Sure." I don't know. This is weird. He's like, "You're a man, dude. It's up to you. You don't have to drink a beer. If you want a beer, have a beer. You have a game ball, be responsible."
Yeah.
And they treated you like a man.
They treated you like a man.
I'm not. They weren't telling me go out and get drunk and be a shit show tomorrow. But it was just everybody there is trying to just make it.
Well, and it's a job. You work hard. You go have a beer. So I sit down and have a beer. Right. It's a lunch pail job. You work hard. You're in the sun. You're there for 8 hours. You get the ball. So I go have a beer. They got rid of a first round pick. They got rid of a second round pick. And you think about your parents and your life when you're. But I never thought about that story of my dad. I just changed my ways from that day, and I try to do things, a different way. Listen, you got to be. There's no choir boys in the Hall of Fame, right? But I'm sitting next to my.
It's a hot take.
I'm sitting next to my manager, and I'm like, Donnie, I'm 0 for 24. You gotta. I got to be on that list. You got rid of Johnny today. You got rid of Andre. I got to be on that list. And a guy gave me a nickname, Swazi, in the minor leagues. That's my baseball name. And he says, Swazi, he goes, you know how long you've been on that list to get rid of you? He says, you're too much fun to have around, man, and everybody loves you. And I was like, you know what? Shit, the old man was right. The old man was right.
You were likable.
And
you didn't cause no problems. And you worked hard, Mark. You were always a hard worker.
I worked hard. And so I left that year. I ended up, on my own merits leaving. And they put me on the suspended list because they didn't want another club to pick me up. I walked away on my own terms. And then I came back. I went back to school. I got
business ball there.
Yeah. I finished my degree, right? And I wanted to be, that's all I knew. All I knew was baseball and black beans and rice, and I that's all I knew. And so I said, I want to stay involved. I want to be on the business side of it. And the team, the Reds were great. They called me back. They sent me to Major League Scouting Bureau School,
okay.
2-week training program in Arizona. I was with, some old school big leaguers like Dan Pasquale, Mike Trout. There was guys there. It was a real impressive program, to run through. And I was selected to go through that program, which was, I still have the diploma in my office. I'm a certified Major League Baseball scout. Okay.
Even to this day.
I didn't go to Harvard. That's what you have to be a new scout.
Yeah.
So.
They want algorithms.
But it taught me how to evaluate people. And it showed me a lot of the metrics. But the transition part, I go back to spring training that first year. I did a couple stints, Latin America, Puerto Rico, but I go back to spring training the first year after being a scout. And Jim Hickman was a mentor to me. He's the guy that hit the base hit when Pete Rose ran over Ray Fosse at the All-Star game.
Yeah.
And he told me those guys were having beers till 4 a.m. and playing cards. Pete and the catcher he ran over. But when it was go time, it was go time. When the bell rang, Pete was going to run through you. This guy was
they were competitors, man.
Yeah, and this guy was our hitting coach. He was our roving hitting instructor, And I come back to spring training and he sees me, he goes, what are you doing here? I said, oh, I'm scouting. And he pulled me aside. And by the way, a lot of people don't know this. Jim Hickman passed away about 3 years ago. The Major League logo, you know how Wilt Chamberlain is the NBA?
Yeah.
Is it Wilt Chamberlain or Bill Russell? I forget. But
Either or.
There's Jim Hickman is the MLB logo. That's
no way.
Picture. Yeah. Never got $1 for it. But that was him. Salt of the earth guy. Wouldn't mess with your swing. All he'd do is talk to you. And he says to me, he says, Swazi, what are you doing here? I said, I'm scouting. And he said, son, he says, I've seen you in the clubhouse. I've seen you reading the paper. He goes, shit, I've seen you read the Wall Street Journal in the clubhouse. He says, there's 2 places you want to be in baseball. Little League or the big leagues. Everywhere else, you're fighting to get to either one. And he says, you're going to have kids one day, and that's your next move, Little League. He says, go out to the real world. You can make a lot of money. You can take everything you've learned from here and be successful.
Wow. How did I change your life?
He changed my life. He changed my life. In the sense that, you know...
And you listen.
In the sense that, you know, this guy's a hitting coach, but he never messed with my swing. I hit a ball one time. I remember I struck out 3 times, and I hit it like a broken bat, like dribbler to the pitcher, 0 for 4. And I said, Hickey, you know what? Can we go in the cage after the game? And he says, Swazi, he goes, the only cure for that swing is the hotel lobby bar, man. We're not hitting balls. I'll meet you there in about an hour. So I go out.
I'm laughing because it's so true, man.
But like, you know,
it's mental.
Yeah. And so we go out to the bar. I mean, we get after it. I mean, I'm talking to a guy that played with Pete Rose. He had a record year with the Mets, you know, and he's taking the time with me, right? I get so hammered. He tucks me in bed, literally, like folds the sheets, tucks me in bed, and he like rubbed my forehead. And he says, stumbling back to the room, and he says, I guarantee you one thing. The last thing you're going to be worried about is that baseball coming at you tomorrow. You're going to be just fine because your head's going to hurt so bad. Next day, 3 for 4, 2 home runs, and that same broken bat was a single. And every time I looked at him, he's at the end of the bench laughing, and he's screaming, hey, we're going back to the bar tonight. But he changed my life. That was my transition moment. We talked about someone that came to you, and I never thought my transition moment would come from someone in baseball pushing me out, or not pushing me out, telling me there's a better place, right? And then listen, there's a whole other now.
There's one guy who told me, John Orton. You remember John Orton was a catcher of the Angels?
Yeah.
J.O. was my head coach.
Yeah.
And I sat down. The night before I left the minor leagues, I was out at a nightclub in Tucson, Arizona until about 4 or 5 in the morning. Okay, I had no money.
I was with a buddy of mine. You just told me you played for the White Sox.
No, I was eating. Back then, truth is, I had a little girlfriend who worked at Hooters, and that's how I ate.
Yeah,
just flat out the truth.
Yeah,
but
you learned that here, survival.
So long story short,
you got to brush your teeth. If you
I went. You know, I had a rover. Who told me the sign of a true professional is a guy who can get up in the morning, work hard, get his lift in, practice hard at night, get his game in, party at night, and do it all over again.
Yeah,
I never forget that. And so I had done my thing. I had a good time. I was in a good place mentally because I was like, this is coming to an end. I was taking a shower in freezing water in a trailer park, and thank God Dennis Olacia took care of me back then. Long story short, I walked in, I showered, I cleaned myself up. Nobody knows nothing. I just show up to the ballpark like a pro, right? And I sat down with J.O. and I said, J.O., for the next 30 minutes, and we've talked about this. I need to know, do I have a chance of making it to the major leagues one day? You're gonna be my dad right now. You're not gonna be my coach.
Right.
And he looked at me. He said, No. So, well, then release me. Like, I'll go somewhere else. There was a guy named Tony Diaz back then who was coaching the Rockies. We used to share a facility with the Rockies. And he was like, dude, we'll take you. Actually, we shared a facility with the Diamondbacks, but at High Corbett, we would play against them. And my point is, he told me the truth. He told me everything I didn't want to hear, which was a tough moment back then. But sometimes baseball does that to you. It's the best thing that can happen to you is somebody's honesty.
Yeah.
And you don't want to be that guy, Mark, right?
Yeah.
You don't want to be the guy who's there forever. Can you imagine the amount of time you would have?
Yeah, look, I didn't want to be that guy, right? And I think you didn't want to be that guy.
I didn't. And I think funny people thought I would be that guy, and I never wanted to.
Yeah, but with that said,
I wanted to make it.
Probably the hardest thing, we've probably ever had to do.
No doubt.
Is like that's our first love.
Well, it's like if you look at
if you think about it, like that's. And by the way, you never forget your first love, which is why I when the breakup's tough, right? That first love breakup's tough, I mean, you're a little bit of a stalker, everybody. It doesn't matter if it's baseball or that first girl that left you, right? That's and it's not so much that it's not there. It's that you're being told it's no more, right? And that's all here and here, right?
Yeah.
So, but with that said, and I had, we've had that happen to us. The only thing harder than that is waking up and saying, now what? Right? Is moving on from that breakup. And look, I didn't look my dad in the eye for a good 6 months. And I'm the guy that looks you right between the eyes and tells you what I need to tell you right between the forehead, right? Right between the eyes, I'll tell you. And look, that's a good attribute. That's pride, right? That's like that's pride, and that's caring. Not only what you think, what other people think, right?
Yeah.
So again, it's good and bad.
It's almost like you should care about what other people. You should have accountability to yourself, but then you really can't give a crap what people think about you.
Right. And so fast forward.
It's a balance.
Fast forward for me, I go out, I get my real estate license. I always wanted to create wealth, and I knew that real estate was the way of doing that. And, one of my good friends' dad owned a management company, and I just said, I'm going to go out and grind it. And I started grinding it. And I always knew, even when I was playing baseball, I always wanted to hang out with older people. I always felt like I couldn't get much from people my age. And I had hair on my chest when I was 12. So, I could rightfully so get away with hanging out with older people. But even when I got into business, I wanted to hang out with the 40-year-old guy, the 50-year-old guy.
You want to learn.
I'm a storyteller. I love to hear stories. I love to hear, how people made it, how they didn't make it, what happened. And I started hanging out with some of the older guys, and I got my way in, and, they took a liking to me because the old man told me you need to be liked. And I had mentors along the way, and it wasn't back to baseball. It wasn't until my high school coach comes to me and he says, wait a minute, let me get this straight. You go out and find these great deals, and you take them to someone, and you get a small fee for doing that, and they go out and make, millions of dollars. I said, yeah, that's what I do. He said, okay, if you transition from baseball to this, you might want to start thinking about transitioning from, this to owning property and to doing things. So, I said, well, how do I do it? He says, well, you got to do it. There's no book on it. You know what I mean? He's like, you've been playing baseball. You didn't go to, you didn't go to Dartmouth like you were supposed to, right? You got to do it. And I went on, I started buying couple deals, smaller deals, with friends, some of my baseball relationships.
So you did that, Mark?
Yeah, and we ended up buying some bigger properties. You when you got into the insurance business, you called me right when you were green on a property we had in West Palm Beach.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the market crashed. you know, and I had, you know, at least, I don't know, $25 million in personal guarantees, which wasn't probably worth anything because it was joint and severable and with partners, but I had my reputation on the line.